Good evening, everybody. This is Betsy Wurzel, host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio. It is Monday evening, March 23rd, and I am coming on to speak about a topic of caregivers understanding their loved ones. Now, some people may get offended about what I'm going to say, and that's okay because I always speak my truth. I have to speak my truth. I will not sugarcoat this disease for anyone. This disease cannot be sugarcoated at all. People need to know the reality of Alzheimer's or any other dementia. Now, am I an expert? No. I have just had 20 years experience of dealing with Alzheimer's. So I have been in the trenches, and I know firsthand of going through it. Personally, living with two people who have had dementia, my mother-in-law and my husband. My father had Alzheimer's, but I did not live with him. So what I want to talk about is, I have my own group, hashtag Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement, but before that, I belonged to many support groups, and I still do. And I would see things that just blow my mind, and I still see things in other groups that just blow my mind. Caregivers sometimes need to get out of their own way. And caregivers, it's not about you. It is about your loved one. Now, if you have dementia and you live alone and you are able to live alone safely, power to you. That's great. Some people with dementia cannot live alone or be left alone. I know of a situation where someone took their loved one out of a facility. We expect their mother to live by themselves, and they expect a 10-year-old to help their grandma. That just is not safe, folks. That is not even common sense. And if that offends someone, well, then so be it. I have seen in groups, why does my mother poop in her pants? I told her not to. And I responded at the time, your mother can't help it. Her brain is dying. Do you think your mother wants to poop in her pants? Nobody wants to have any kind of dementia. Nobody wants to be pooping and peeing in their pants. And yes, I'm very blunt, folks. Nobody wants to hallucinate. This is a horrid disease. I remember when Matt was prior to wearing Depends, he would tell me if I had to wear diapers, I'm going to kill myself. But when the time came, he did not know that he was wearing diapers. I didn't call it diapers. I called it underwear, and he didn't know the difference. I hear and I see my husband didn't remember my birthday, anniversary. Why didn't they remember? They cry and they're insulted because the person didn't remember their birthday or anniversary. It's not that they wanted to forget. Their brains are dying. They can't remember their own birthday. And they can't maybe pick up a pen or pencil and write you something in a card. Matt used to write me poems in a card. He could no longer do that. But before I knew he had Alzheimer's, I thought maybe he was mad at me because our 29th anniversary, he didn't write anything. And I came to find out a few months later it was because he had Alzheimer's. So, of course, they cannot go out shopping for you and buy you a gift. Maybe if you took them to the store, they can. Of course, now the stores are closed. But before this virus hit, maybe you were able to go shopping with them. What I used to do is I used to buy myself a gift, and I even did this way before Matt had dementia. And I said, look, Matt, look what you got me. Thank you. You have to go with the flow, folks. You have to go with your loved one. And, yes, I know it's hard to accept. And I know it's hard to accept the changes, and you don't like the changes. Nobody does. Do you think your loved one likes the changes? You know what, folks, sometimes, and I'm guilty of this, I was guilty of this myself, we focus on ourselves, how we feel, what we're going through, how hard it is for us. But try to put yourself in your loved one's situation, in your loved one's shoes. How do you think your loved one feels? That they can no longer drive, go to the store. They lost their independence. They can't even go to the bathroom by themselves, take a shower by themselves. Excuse me. This was hard, folks. This was hard for me to accept the changes and to adapt. And so that's why I tell you all my experience so you don't make the same mistakes that I made. Save yourself the heartache and the stress and accept how your loved one is and adapt, or you're going to cause yourself more stress, and therefore you're going to cause your loved one to have more stress. They can't help it. When Matt started losing skills, yes, it was hard. I remember one day I put out his clothes and I said, okay, get changed. It's time to get dressed. And he said he didn't know how. I said, I got mad. I said, what do you mean you don't know how? You knew how to do it yesterday. Literally, they can lose skills overnight. My mother-in-law one day was walking around half naked. She forgot how to get dressed. It happens. And we really have to accept our loved ones. What was heartbreaking for me, and I'm going to share my experience, is one day I complained to Matt that I can't get out early. And I wasn't nice. And then I got my car and I cried and I came back and I apologized. And Matt was always forgiving. And he said, that's okay, Ruby. But I get emotional. I don't want to apologize. I had an aha moment. I had an epiphany. I will eventually gain my independence back when Matt dies, which I did. But Matt will never, ever gain back his independence, which he didn't. So, listeners, caregivers, potential caregivers, future caregivers, please put yourself in your loved one's shoes. I remember Matt crying one day, and Matt was not one to show emotion, and Matt was not one to tell his feelings, even before he had dementia. And I said, Matt, what's the matter? And he said, I hate the way I am. I can't do anything. And I hugged him. And we both cried. And I reassured him that I loved him just the way he was. And that Josh loved him just as he was. And it's okay. We are here to take care of him. He didn't want to be taken care of, but he knew he needed it. I said, it's okay. We will help you. And I don't blame you for not liking how things are with you. But try not to hate yourself, because it's not your fault. You didn't ask for this. Folks, nobody in their right mind asks to have any type of dementia. Nobody wants this disease. We as caregivers need to be loving and kind and compassionate. Is it easy all the time? No. We are running, you are running, I'm no longer a caregiver, except to Josh. But I know what it was like. Believe me, I do. And I won't ever forget what it was like to be a caregiver. Caregivers run on fumes sometimes, at pure adrenaline fumes. And do you snap at your loved ones? Yes, I snapped at Matt. I most certainly did. I am not perfect. I never said I was perfect. But I asked Matt to forgive me, and I forgave myself. And caregivers, no one's perfect. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. If you are a perfect caregiver, please contact me. I want to interview you. There are no perfect caregivers. And yes, we make mistakes, and we learn from our mistakes. And caregivers, you need to show yourself love, grace, kindness, and forgiveness when you do goof up. And you will goof up. And it's okay. Now, I'm not talking about abuse here, because being abusive and losing your patience once in a while are two different things. Abuse is never acceptable. And caregivers, you know, if you find yourself that you cannot take care of your loved one anymore, it's okay. You did not fail your loved one. I used to see this all the time. I failed my loved one. I can't take care of them. I promised my loved one I would take care of them. Folks, let me tell you now, if you are not a caregiver, do not make these promises. If you are a caregiver and you're at the beginning of this journey, don't make these promises. Nobody has a crystal ball. You can't predict the future. Any type of dementia is unpredictable in predicting what the journey will be like. We only know one thing, that death is inevitable. And what happens from the time of diagnosis to the day a person dies is different for everyone, and it is unpredictable. You did not feel your loved one if you had to place them. It is a heart-wrenching decision. And if you feel they are not safe, if you feel that they need more care than what you can give them, it's best to know your limitations and accept them. And it's okay to place them. And please know you did not feel your loved one. I was getting to a point where if I think if Matt would have came out of that hospice unit, I would have had to place him. I didn't want to, but I think eventually I probably would have, because I know I would not have been able to take care of him at all. It was getting harder, and it was getting more difficult. And also, caregivers, you have your own health to think about. And that's not selfish. That's not being self-centered. You have a right to your own life. And if taking care of your loved one is putting your health in jeopardy, then maybe you should think about placing your loved one. It might be a little difficult now with this virus going on. I don't know how that is working out with nursing facilities accepting new clients at this time. you would have to check with your facilities. And I know and how hard it must be for you caregivers to be stuck in the house now with your loved one. You're probably ready to climb the walls, and especially during a full moon. Excuse me. And yes, I have worked as a nurse, I work in a preschool, I have seen it with Matt, and yes, I do believe a full moon affects people's behaviors. I have been around long enough to know it and have seen it and experienced it firsthand. So now that people are isolated in their houses, it must be difficult. And my heart goes out to people who are isolated with their loved ones and for those who cannot see their loved ones in the facility. That, I'm sure, is heartbreaking beyond words. Think of activities that you can do with your loved one in your house, what their capabilities are, what they like to do, what they can do. Don't do things they don't like. Don't do things that will frustrate them. Matt never liked crossword puzzles. Why would I expect him to do it? He couldn't even see or hold a pencil. So why would I expect Matt to like things that he didn't like doing before? And looking at pictures, that's fine if your person can see. Matt's vision was distorted, and he couldn't see well, and it was frustrating for him. So he liked to watch TV. I let him watch TV. You have to take the person where they are at. And nobody wants to be set up for failure. So if you know your loved one doesn't like something, don't have them do it. Would you like someone having you to do something that you don't like? Think how they would feel. And, especially with, now people can't have holidays at their house, but before the virus and after this is over, when you go to someone's house, please keep your loved one's needs first. If you know crowds are too much, if you know they can't take noise, remove them from that situation before it gets out of hand. And you could always tell the person, I'm sorry, I have to leave, or I can only stay for a little while. It depends on my loved one's mood and situation. And it is a great time to educate your loved ones before a gathering about your loved one's situation. And yes, I know you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. It's not your responsibility what someone does with information. That's their responsibility. What your responsibility is to give the information. And that person that you give it to, that's on them what they do with it. And, excuse me, I think I'll always have this cough. But my voice is back, pretty much. And, folks, I know I have said this before in other shows, and it bears repeating for new caregivers, for caregivers that have been in this but maybe need to be reminded. And it is not easy being a caregiver. Let's face it. Let's call it what it is. It can be very rewarding, yes, and it also can stink. It's not easy watching your loved one lose their skills. I know. I personally grieved with each skill that Matt lost. It was a sense of loss. It is a sense of loss. So if you feel like you are grieving because your loved one lost a skill, that is normal. That is perfectly normal, whatever normal is, but that is normal. But I didn't know that at the time. And I used to think, why do I feel this sense of loss, like I'm grieving someone? And then I read about it, and yes, you grieve every time they lose a skill, because it is a sense of loss. And to think about how your loved one feels. People with dementia, of course, they tend to be depressed. Who wouldn't be? When you can't read, drive, do your job, do things that you used to do, wouldn't you be depressed? So think about how your loved one feels. And let me tell you something, folks, and I learned this way too late. Your loved one feeds off your energy. So if you're hysterical and you're anxious, they're going to be. Your loved one doesn't care about fancy presents, about fancy dinners. They don't care. Take my word for it. They want you, and they want you to love up on them. They want you to reassure them and just be there for them. Just sit next to them. They don't care about this other stuff. And you know what, folks? If you have to change your traditions or you have to change your routine and your rituals, that's fine. You're going to have to change it. And you will get it back again. But when you get it back, your loved one won't be with you. And if your family members don't understand and they are judgmental and criticize you, then you need to set boundaries. And there is nothing wrong with setting boundaries with family members or friends. Don't let people disrespect you and criticize you. Let them spend a day with your loved one. And then they could see how it is. Thankfully, I didn't have that problem. But I know that people do. And I had a situation where someone had asked me to talk about it. And then the person got mad at me because I didn't mention their name. I just mentioned the situation because her son would come and criticize how she was caregiving for her husband. And, you know, if you have a dysfunctional family before dementia or any other illness, it's going to be dysfunctional during an illness. And if you let your children disrespect you and criticize you before an illness, they're going to do it still. And I told this person I would not accept my son criticizing me or disrespecting me. And I would tell my son, if he didn't live at home, if you think you could care for your father better, I will have his things packed up and I will have him at your door tomorrow. And good luck. And then I won't come over and critique you. Folks, sometimes you got to get downright dirty and get where the rubber meets the road with some relatives and friends. And sometimes being very abrupt is the only thing people understand. If they don't understand it a kind, gentle way, then you have to get firmer. And that's okay. And it's also okay to cut ties with toxic people. You don't need the extra aggravation. And it's okay to say, you know what, I can't deal with you now. I'll deal with you later. And if you want to learn about how to handle situations, there's plenty of information on YouTube, on the internet, I have some recommendations. Teepa, Teeta Snow, Snow, has wonderful information. There's an Alzheimer's reading room by Bob DeMarco, wonderful information. There are sites and there are support groups all over. The YouTube is filled with caregivers giving advice and many different shows about dementia. Just type in dementia on YouTube and you'll see a whole lot of information to go to. Nowadays, with the internet, you have much information available at your fingertips. I did not have that 20 years ago with my mother-in-law, and I didn't even have it 10 years ago with Matt. Well, I didn't have a computer 10 years ago or a smartphone, but there wasn't much information available. I had to learn on my own, and that is one tough way to learn until I joined support groups and I learned from other caregivers. And folks, it is caregivers who are helping other caregivers. This isn't the doctor's office. Although I will say the neurologist we go to, I should say I go to, but that I went to him. His wife is a psychiatrist, a geriatric psychiatrist, and she is focusing now on the caregiver and teaching the caregiver. So I'm like, hallelujah. Doctors are finally starting to address the caregiver. Honestly, folks, I would consider taking a caregiving course before I would become a caregiver. If you've never been a caregiver, you need to take a course and then decide if this is what you want to do, if you can do it. And, you know, folks, there's nothing wrong with checking out nursing facilities, assisted living centers, memory care facilities, and just getting a backup. Of course, now you can't visit them, but after this all comes down, you can go visit. Excuse me. Also, think about palliative care and hospice as your loved one is at the end. I think it's a great idea, and I can't stress this enough. When you get diagnosed with your loved one, run to your nearest lawyer's office that specializes in elder law, get power of attorney for medical and financial, and a living will. And folks, we need to discuss the end of life. Ask your loved one their wishes of what they are. And if you're not comfortable with it, ask anyway. You need to know what their wishes are, how they want to be treated at the end of life. This is very important, folks. My son is going to be 36. He is healthy for now. My son is at very high risk for early onset Alzheimer's. And I'm going to take him to a lawyer this summer, if they're still open, to get power of attorney of him and for Josh to make out a living will, because you never know what can happen. And I've already discussed with Josh end of life and what his wishes would be. And you might think, oh, Betsy, that's terrible. Josh is only 36. You shouldn't be talking about those things. Yes, we need to talk about these things with our children who live at home, and we need to discuss these things with our parents and spouses, partners. It is vital to talk about it. And that's what I have to say today, folks. I just felt this gut instinct to come on and my guts, as I say, and talk about the nitty-gritty of caregiving. And I don't sugarcoat, as I said before. I'm not going to wrap it up in a pretty pink bow because caregiving is messy. And at times it's not pretty. And this disease isn't pretty. And I want people to know what to expect, what you can do. And God bless all you caregivers out there and the post-caregivers. And all you can do is do your best, the best way you know how. You can't do any more. And please, caregiver, show yourself love and self-care. And I will say this every time I come on the air if I have to. Self-care is vital to your life. If you want to enjoy caregiving, if you want to enjoy life after caregiving, you need to stay healthy. You need to do as much self-care as possible. Excuse me. It is very, very important. Mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. And I'm going to tell you something, folks. I'm going to share this right here. I was depleted after Matt passed. And I only took 7 days off from work. I went back to work. And I was really exhausted. I'd come home, I would fall asleep. Caregiving literally sucked the life force out of me, not to mention grieving. And I am grateful in a way that I am now being forced to stay at home and to take care of myself. And I am focusing on my self-care, and I am getting the rest that I so desperately need. My voice is better. I think I always have a cough. But this happens. So I just want to prepare you, caregiver. Rest up. After your loved one passes, you need to rest. You need to take care of yourself. And as my friend Marcia Burr would say, be the care receiver. And it's okay to love up on yourself and do self-care. And even though I have a mound of things to do, I'm getting my rest first. And in this time of the pandemic, I am trying to be grateful for staying at home, getting my rest that I need, getting caught up on things. I'm doing self-improvements online, and there, believe it or not, is always something to be grateful for. So be the shining star that you are. Shine light, shine bright. This is Betsy Wurzel, host of Chatting with Betsy at Passion World Talk Radio. Jeannie White is the producer. Please, you can follow me on my Facebook page, Betsy Wurzel, Wurzel, and you are welcome to join my group, #Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement. It's for all dementias. It's for people who have dementia, those who don't, for caregivers, for past caregivers, for people who just want to be educated about dementias. You are more than welcome to join. Thank you, everybody. Till I'm on the air again, take care, be well, and be safe. Bye-bye.